Heart on Fire. Susan B. Anthony votes for president. The 14th Amendment, passed by Congress June 13, 1866, ratified July 9, 1868. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law by which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Section 5. The Congress shall have the power to enforce, by appropriate legislation, the provisions of this article. The 19th Amendment, passed by Congress June 4, 1919, ratified August 18, 1920. Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Rochester, New York, November 1st, 1872. 4 days to the presidential election. Register now, the morning paper said. Susan B. Anthony jumped up to grab her purse and her wrap. Out the door and down the street she flew. Her sister Hannah and friend Mary hoisted their skirts to keep up. Women could not be equal to men if they did not vote. Miss Anthony's heels tapped faster and faster. At the voter registration office, she marched in like a gust of wind. This was the moment Miss Anthony had dreamed of for so long. She demanded to register to vote. The inspectors looked up, shocked and confused. Only men could sign up to vote, not women who owned property, paid taxes, held a job, or raised children. No woman was allowed to cast a ballot. Outrageous, unbelievable, true. Miss Anthony believed women did have the right of the vote because of a new law, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. All persons born in the United States have the same rights as citizens, she told the men. Wasn't she a person and a citizen? The inspectors scratched their heads. They argued, yes, Miss Anthony's right. Debated, no, women cannot vote. And finally disagreed. Then one man said, sign here. It was done. Miss Anthony had registered to vote. Election Day, November 5th, 1872. Up at dawn, Miss Anthony raced to the polls at 7 a.m. sharp. Lighting the match, Miss Anthony cast her vote. Throwing more tinder, 15 other women did too. That night before she slept, she wrote her good friend Elizabeth Cady Stanton, well, I have been and gone and done it. Miss Anthony had voted for president. Trouble was simmering. November 18, 1872. Rap, rap, rap. The deputy federal marshal stepped into the parlor and took off his beaver hat. What had he come in for? To arrest you, he said, turning red. Miss Anthony held out her hands. I demand that I should be arrested properly. But he would not handcuff a lady. At the federal office downtown, she saw her sisters, her friends who voted, and even men who had let them vote, all arrested. The charge? voting without having the lawful right to vote. Then she was sent home to wait. In January, the news got worse. Miss Anthony must pay $1,000 or go to jail until her trial. Outrageous. Unbelievable. True. When her lawyer paid the bail, Miss Anthony was angry. She didn't want the court to give She didn't want to give the court a dime. Her trial was set for spring. News of her arrest spread like wildfire, sparking fury. "The lady has done no wrong," wrote one reporter. "Female lawlessness," declared another. Miss Anthony knew she was right. Without the vote, women had no say in laws and government in the future. To her, voting was everything. Failure was impossible. She cut every story out of the papers to save. Spring 1873. As the trial drew closer, she took to the roads to argue her case. Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Chicago, towns large and small. 100 people in one hamlet came out in a fierce snowstorm to hear her speak. Is it a crime for a citizen of the United States to vote? She demanded to know. Many clapped for her. Some weren't so sure. A few hissed and shook their heads. It was a crime for a woman to vote. She must face the consequences. June 17, 1873. The Ontario County Courthouse. Not a seat was empty when Miss Anthony strode into the courtroom in her new silk bonnet. People had come from miles away. Congressmen, newspaper reporters, curiosity seekers, and friends. How proud she looked. Did she know this trial was a trial no woman could win? No one could hear her burning heart pounding. The United States versus Susan B. Anthony. Miss Anthony's lawyer defended her. "I advised her that she was as lawful a voter as I am, or as any other man is." The prosecutor attacked her. If she is a woman, and she voted, and voting is against the law for women, then she is guilty. The judge had heard enough. He pulled a paper from his pocket. "The 14th Amendment gives no right to a woman to vote," he read aloud. And the voting by Miss Anthony was in violation of the law. He told the jury to find her guilty. "The greatest outrage history ever witnessed," she wrote in her journal that night. The next day, the judge asked, "Do you have anything to say?" Miss Anthony rose to her feet. "Yes, Your Honor, I have many things to say. You have trampled underfoot every vital principle of our government. My natural rights, my civil rights, my political rights, my judicial rights, and all alike ignored." The crowd inhaled. The prosecutor tightened his lips. The judge banged his gavel. "The court cannot allow the prisoner to go on." Her heart was on fire. No one could stop her. "The prisoner must sit down," roared the judge. She spoke louder still, but it was no use. The trial was over. Miss Anthony was found guilty. The judge ordered her to pay $100 plus court costs. Outrageous. Unbelievable. True. She had one more thing to say, as a person and a citizen. "May it please your Honor," Miss Anthony said, "I shall never pay $1 of your unjust penalty." And Susan B. Anthony never did.